Take a step on the road to fun. Take a step on the road into nature. Take a step on the road into the past. Take a step on the road to sharing powerful stories. Take a step on the road to experiencing big ideas. Take a step with Humanities on the Road as speakers from the Pennsylvania Humanities Council take you on a journey through history, literature, the arts, and the world around you. Learn more about Humanities on the Road and discover why the humanities are important to you at humanitiesontheroad.org. Welcome to Humanities on the Road. Today we're at the National Archives in Philadelphia. This is one of 14 regional branches that preserves the historically significant records of federal agencies and courts in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, and West Virginia, dating from 1789 to the present. Records of Camp William Penn, the subject of our presentation, are housed here, as well as many others that document local fugitive slaves, as well as the Civil War effort. Hello, everyone. I'm Tracy Matisak. Humanities on the Road is a wonderful opportunity for audiences all over Pennsylvania to take a closer look at history and art and the ideas that shape our world. As part of this particular program, we're going to be asking, what do we know about Black soldiers during the Civil War? Our special guest, Don Scott, is an assistant professor of English at the Community College of Philadelphia. He is also a history columnist for the Journal Register Company, and Don is the author of Camp William Penn. It's a book that uses archival photographs to present distinctive stories from our past. So with that said, let's turn it over to Don for Saluting Camp William Penn. Please join me as we welcome Don Scott.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all of you for having me here today. It's truly a great honor. I'd like to dedicate this event to the warriors of the USCT, or United States Colored Troops, for their tremendous bravery and making America the wonderful country that it is today. And my mother, Mrs. Grace Scott, who gave the deepest guidance, love, and dedication that allowed our family to accomplish the loftiest of goals, along with my dynamic and late father, Dr. Henry Scott, MD. Now, to get started, I'd like to reveal interesting historical facts about Camp William Penn. Camp William Penn was named for Pennsylvania's founder, William Penn, despite his ownership of slaves well before the Revolutionary War. Ironically, the failure to resolve the slavery issue during that war led to America addressing the problem horribly during the Civil War. Camp William Penn was established in the summer of 1863 as Confederate troops moved into Pennsylvania towards Philadelphia, including near a place called Gettysburg, with the great abolitionist Frederick Douglass addressing the first troops at Camp William Penn. The camp was established with funds from the Union League of Philadelphia and black religious as well as civic groups just northwest of Philadelphia and what is today Cheltenham Township, near Broad and Cheltenham Avenue. That is where almost 11,000 free blacks and ex-slaves trained for many of the battles of the Civil War, starting in the summer of 1863. The soldiers, including the 3rd, were among the country's first federal soldiers under Lincoln's United States Colored Troops Bureau, with the camp known as the largest and first to officially train such soldiers in America. And in 1865, as the war wound down, Harriet Tubman, the matriarch of the Underground Railroad, spoke to the 24th United States Colored Troops of Camp William Penn. Other abolitionists associated with the camp included the white Quaker Lucretia Mott, who operated a major stop of the Underground Railroad right near her mansion and at her mansion, as well as Sojourner Truth, William Lloyd Garrison, William Stale, known as the father of the Underground Railroad. All of this in this small area outside of Philadelphia. At first called Camptown, the community of Lamont, where the camp was located in Cheltenham, is named actually after Lucretia Mott. In short, Camp William Penn is a national treasure that must be exposed in every possible way. That is why I've composed a pictorial book about the facility and will show some of the images, such as the soldiers on the cover from the 25th United States Colored Troops, that I found throughout the eastern seaboard. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the incredible story of Camp William Penn. Now imagine one of the 3rd Regiment soldiers standing around a campfire, being an ex-slave and destined to become Florida's first black U.S. congressman. But as a young man, he was forced during the Civil War to serve in the Confederate Army before being captured by the Union and later joining the 3rd USCT of Camp William Penn. Josiah Thomas Walls, who'd one day die in utter obscurity, sponsored some of this country's earliest initiatives to institutionalize public education, as well as supported U.S. Army pensioners, infrastructure improvements, and what he was first to dub my own sunny state. In fact, Walls certainly did not get his zest for civil rights and equality the easy way. Born a slave in Winchester, Virginia in 1842, he was likely the biracial son of his so-called master, Dr. John Walls, and an unidentified slave woman before he became a servant to a Confederate artilleryman until he was captured by Union soldiers in May of 1862. And when Walls joined the 3rd Infantry United States Colored Troops in July of 1863, he may have even been inspired by the great abolitionist Frederick Douglass, who spoke that July at Camp William Penn. The 3rd USCT was the first regiment to be formed and trained at the camp, eventually serving in South Carolina at Forts Gregg and Wagner on Morris Island in September of 1863. That was several months after the Massachusetts 54th of Glory fame valiantly succumbed to rebel forces at Wagner. The group eventually traveled to Florida, where Walls settled after transferring to the 35th USCT. He would reach the rank of corporal, but several of his 3rd USCT compatriots were ultimately executed following the war after being railroaded and charged with treason because of a violent racial conflict with local Floridians and officers whom had tortured one of their fellow black soldiers. It's possible that Josiah Walls and certainly his fellow patriots of the 3rd USCT saw the great Frederick Douglass when he entered the grounds of Camp William Penn on the afternoon of Saturday, July 18th, 1863. Yet Douglass was greeted by a very disturbing sight. As the legendary black leader prepared to speak, he saw a number of black recruits standing atop barrels with rails over their shoulders as punishment for various military infractions. Some soldiers were angry at their lower pay compared to white troops, as well as what they considered to be inferior living conditions. And by the way, medical conditions also, medical treatment. A couple wrote complaining letters to President Abraham Lincoln. Still, Douglass was clearly angry when he began to address the troops of the 3rd Regiment because he had learned that some of the men, many bearing the scars of slavery, were giving their white officers plenty of trouble. One disgusted officer condemned the ability of the black recruits to become good soldiers. Douglass told the men, quote, "The fortunes of the whole race for generations to come are bound up in the success or failure of the 3rd Regiment of colored troops from the North. You are a spectacle for men and angels. You are in a manner to answer the question, can the black man be a soldier?" His confident voice rose, and he continued, "That we can now make soldiers of these men, there can be no doubt. It was not that he did not understand the soldiers' problems. He had shared their agonizing past, and he knew their pain. Underneath his garments, on his back, he wore a stark reminder, horrible scars caused by the flesh-slicing whip of a Maryland slave overseer. Meanwhile, white officers for the facility were recruited and trained at the Free Military School for the applicants for the command of colored troops at 1210 Chestnut Street, which of course is right down the street, was right down the street from where we are tonight. Only white officers were recruited for the commanding positions. Established during the summer of 1863, hundreds of candidates applied, but only a small percentage was chosen after stringent testing and interviews. The black soldiers on sentry duty there had to receive more than their share of attention given the novelty of seeing black soldiers in arms during that period in history. Across town, Lucretia Coffin Mott shared the deep spirituality of many African Americans and is central to the story of Camp William Penn. And that's why the current community where the camp was located is named for this great woman who lived in her mansion called Roadside, adjacent to the fort during the Civil War. Born January 3rd, 1793 in Nantucket, Massachusetts, to Quaker parents, Mott believed in equality for women and African Americans. Her mother's family line, the Folgers, had blood ties to the family of Benjamin Franklin, a slaveholder himself at first, and then turning to abolitionism. And of historical interest, one of her ancestors, coffin ancestors, was on the whale ship, the Essex. That's the whaling story from which the writer Herman Melville developed his great novel, Moby Dick. Most notably, Mott and her husband James operated a major center of the Underground Railroad from their residence that was several blocks above what's today Cheltenham Avenue on Old York Road.